What's up, horror fans? Pete here from the Lassercast, where me and my good friend Dr. Zayas God, Danny Torkel, review horror movies and streaming shows. We cover movies from all the different decades, and including this one, but we're going back to 2004 today to talk about M. Night Shyamalan's The Village. Danny, you sounded a little bit regretful a moment ago. Are you regretting choosing to review Shyamalan movies this summer?
No, excuse me. No, I think I think he's been, for better or for worse, a uh, an important cog in the horror wheel in the 21st century.
Yeah,
Being that really obviously his career took off with The Sixth Sense in 1999, and then everything else has been within the last 25 years. Well, basically the last 25 years. Uh, the movie we're covering today is the movie that I think started the downfall for me. I didn't get a chance to look up, and I know you're probably on your computer. So, do you know what this movie cost and how much it made? Do you have like the box office? Can you get? Because I'm
I'll pull it
interested
up.
to see. All right.
Yeah, and while you make another point, I'll pull it up.
No, because his first three movies, his first three horror slash sci-fi movies were The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, and Signs. We
Yeah,
covered Unbreakable. We both love Unbreakable. The whole world, unless you're being a super contrarian way after the fact, the whole world loved The Sixth Sense. There's a lot of
yeah,
people who you could find who probably, oh, I knew the ending. I was able to predict it. It wasn't really that. No, that movie was nominated for Best Picture as a
right.
genre film. Let's give that movie the credit it deserves. Unbreakable, we both really liked. We both just rewatched it. It holds up.
Mm-hmm.
Signs, I think Signs was a different type of movie.
Yeah,
It was very plainly science fiction. It has some great horror moments. Whether or not you like the ending of that movie, it also doesn't really have a twist other than just water kills the aliens, which was stupid, but okay. It's not really a twist. It's just kind of figuring out. It's kind of a twist on the War of the Worlds, where it turns out that like the aliens are allergic to bacteria, and that's how they die in War of the Worlds, uh,
yes,
or or germs. So
right.
this movie is the first time, and the expression that I wrote down is selling your audience a false bill of goods.
Oh,
And
oh,
and this is the first time where I think that Shyamalan, and I don't know if it was him, and I've spoken to several filmmakers who have told me that they have very much no input in the marketing of their films.
okay.
The you know they can create their own trailer or teaser, but that's
Okay.
usually done by a marketing company. That's usually done by like an editing or marketing company to sell the film. This movie, and I remember because I was super excited for it, this movie was sold as a period piece monster movie.
Yes.
That there is a village in the 1800s. In fact, I actually spent $4 to watch this last night. I rented it on Vudu is now called Fandango at Home, so I rented it
Oh,
on
okay.
there for $3.99. And the little blurb on the screen when you click on the village says, "In a 19th century village."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's right there. Like they're not
Mm-hmm.
even. So they're not telling you it's a village. They are telling you that this is a period piece.
Yeah.
Everyone is dressed in period costumes. They do not have any modern technology. This is a period piece, and there are monsters in the woods.
Yeah.
That is what this movie sold you. Now, I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know if that's what M. Night Shyamalan wanted to sell the audience.
Yeah.
I kind of think he might have did,
Mm-hmm.
but when that is the bill that you're selling your audience, it's like you go into a restaurant and the restaurant all the commercials for the restaurant promise the best steak you'll ever have. like we have the best steaks in town, and you go
Yes.
in and they're like, oh, we have great salad, we have great side dishes, and our steaks are actually made with like chicken meat, and we cook them to look like steaks. You're gonna be it. Here's the thing: that chicken steak could be really good, but you're going to walk out of there pissed off because you were told, you were walking in expecting the best steak you've ever had, and you got something completely different. A lot of people I've seen defending this movie for the last 20 years have said, they like it because it's well acted, which for the most part I agree with. I think there's some very good acting in this movie, namely from Joaquin Phoenix, Bryce Dallas Howard, and William Hurt.
Yeah.
The late, great William Hurt. I think there's a lot of there is one part of this movie. There's one scene in this movie that I could argue might be the best individual scene M. Night Shyamalan has directed. I love it. I think it's a perfect, and it has nothing to do with horror or monsters. It's an amazing little moment in this movie that I love.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, in the last 30 minutes of this movie, I feel like the director, who happens to be the writer of this movie, and the person who made the trailer for this movie is slapping me in the face and giving me the finger repeatedly. I felt that in 2004.
Yeah.
I walked out of this movie angry. I cursed out one of my friends who I still value as a friend today. She was like, "Oh, I really liked it," and I was like, "No, it fucking sucks."
Whoa. Okay.
And it made me. Now, it didn't make me violently, viciously, and it never made me violently angry. I want to make that. It never.
It's good to know.
Yeah, it didn't make me angry rewatching it because I knew what was going to happen. And in fact, I probably liked it a little bit more because I got to enjoy some of these other subtle moments that are in the movie.
Right.
But I still cannot get over that last 30 minutes and the false bill of goods that we were sold as an audience.
Yes.
And I think that you can very clearly draw a line between the last 30 minutes of this movie and M. Night Shyamalan's career for the next probably decade after this. Because we covered The Visit, which was 2015. So for 11 years after this, he made critical bomb after critical bomb after all-time critical bomb, to the point where just a decade after this, coming off 3 highly praised films, he was almost a joke in Hollywood.
Right.
So do you have those numbers, by the way?
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Sure. So the movie cost 116 million to make, and then they grossed worldwide 256 million. So I know there's always talk about the marketing and how that's essentially another 100 million, or it's like double the budget. But it says that the movie was a financial success. So it's funny.
He came out with Lady in the Water not far after this. I think it was probably the next year. So he was still getting budgets. I think this is the movie, though, where people walked out for the first time. They probably walked out a little bit angry at his twist ending.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of spoiled their appetites walking into Lady in the Water.
Yeah.
Which ironically, I don't remember hating that much, but was universally criticized and complained about.
Yeah, I think a lot of people by the time of Lady in the Water had that sense of fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, And so one of the people that had that sense was Mr. Roger Ebert. And Roger Ebert hated this movie. It's on his list of worst movies of all time. I just wanted to read this quote from Roger Ebert. Right here it says, this is from Roger Ebert. The Village is a colossal miscalculation, a movie based on a premise that cannot support it, a premise so transparent it would be laughable, were the movie not so deadly solemn. It's a flimsy excuse for a plot with characters who move below the one-dimensional and enter flatland. It's one more part. M. Night Shyamalan, the writer-director, has been successful in evoking horror from minimalist stories, as in Signs, which, if you think about it, is rationally absurd, but you get too involved to think rationally. He is a director of considerable skill who evokes stories out of moods, but this time, alas, he took the day off. So that's Roger Ebert in 2004 talking about this movie. I actually value Roger Ebert a lot. I know some people get kind of upset with Siskel and Ebert, but I think that for the most part, I agree with a lot of his observations. We can go ahead and we could talk about the twist of this movie because this movie's 20 years old. Everyone that's watching this video has seen this movie. They know the twist. He called it a shaggy dog story. I just wanted to explain what the fuck that was. It's not a movie that has a remake with Tim Allen. A shaggy dog story is an extremely long-winded anecdote characterized by extensive narration of typically irrelevant incidents and terminated by an anticlimax. In other words, it's a long story that's intended to be amusing and that has an intentionally silly or meaningless ending.
I feel like Norm Macdonald made his entire career on Shaggy Dog story jokes.
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I can buy into that. I have my quibbles with Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel, but it's more from their just complete disdain for like the horror genre
Sure.
when they were at the peak of their powers.
Sure.
In the 80s. Like I think a lot of the negativity that people of our parents' generation had towards horror was rooted in Siskel and Ebert telling them that it's bad and that we shouldn't watch it.
Yeah.
But they're also, in a way, two of my idols. I wrote newspaper. I wrote for my high school newspaper. I wrote movie reviews for my high school newspaper. I went to college with the idea that I was going to major in cinema, and I took cinema critique classes, and I would go out to the movie theater in Binghamton with pads and pencils and take notes and write reviews for the newspapers there. And to an extent, I actually got to do that later in my life when I got when I started writing for Geeks of Doom. Basically writing horror movie reviews and talking with horror, people in the horror community, and that kind of opened us up to doing this channel. So I think we do, and a lot of the people more successful than us who do this for a living, they probably owe a great deal to Roger Ebert. Siskel and Ebert. I think that one thing that I'm noticing that he said with M. Night Shyamalan movies is, and this kind of ties back to the line that we always talk about with Chris, where if you're not into the movie, you're going to start nitpicking it a lot more than you would if you were into the movie.
Yeah.
M. Night Shyamalan movies fall apart the second you start to think really deeply about anything. And the key to a movie like that is the movie has to be engrossing enough that the audience isn't thinking about those little tiny things. So I'll give you one example. There's a scene in this movie where William Hurt and Sigourney Weaver are having a private conversation behind a house, not in public, and they are talking about this is right after the wedding scene, right after Judy Greer gets married.
Yeah.
And where she gets married to Franz Kans, I don't know, the guy from the stoner dude from Cabin in the Woods. That's her husband.
Okay, yeah. That's crazy.
There's a million, we were chatting last night. There's a million like actors in this movie. You're like, wait, is that Oscar nominee Jesse Eisenberg standing like this with his back to the woods?
Right.
Is that Michael Pitt of Boardwalk Empire with a terrible haircut, like escorting her through the woods?
Yeah.
There's this scene. It's right after the wedding. They hear screams. The monsters have left red marks, the forbidden color on the door, and you're like, oh shit, okay, something's gonna happen now. And then they are behind a house completely alone, talking about why are the monsters upset with us? It couldn't have been a coyote. It had to be the monsters. Why are they? And here's the thing, Pete. They know there
Yes.
are no monsters. They are in on it. So their whole private conversation is completely for us. It's a complete phony baloney scene that could never possibly happen in this world.
Right.
Unless there was a camera there and they are trying to trick us, the fucking morons in the audience who have already given our money. And a scene like that, when you're watching it for the first time, you don't think about. But when you know the twist, it is insulting that a scene like that made it to that nobody said to M. Night Shyamalan, in the script, they know that this is all a sham. So why are they talking about monsters as if they're real when they know that they're fake and have probably dressed up as them throughout the movie? So and to Roger Ebert's point, there are a lot of scenes like that in this movie that, given a rewatch, or once you know the twist and you start to think about it, none of it makes sense. And this is where you go from having a twist ending that is there in the story. What is the here? I'm going to ask you, what is the most famous line in The Sixth Sense?
I see dead people.
100%. That is correct, right?
Yes, yeah.
Well, Haley Joel Osment's character says, I see dead people. That is on the marketing. So when you find out that the main character of that movie, who has been talking to the kid who sees dead people, is in fact a dead person, you go, oh, fuck. Oh, that makes perfect sense. He sees dead people. Of course, Bruce Willis is dead. And then when you rewatch it, you start to realize no one in the movie ever speaks directly to Bruce Willis. There are other human beings in the scene with him, but none of them talk to him. And it makes the twist that much better because you go, oh my God, he's talking, but nobody's reacting to him. He's at dinner with his wife, but his wife isn't talking to him. And it makes it that much better. In this movie, the second you think about the twist for 8 seconds, the entire rest of the movie, like dominoes, just falls down.
The thumbnail I made for this video says that when you watch this movie for the first time, it is legitimately scary. Then after you know the twist, it's not. And it's not scary at all after you know the twist. There's no tension. There's no, you're not scared. When you watch The Sixth Sense, there's scenes that are still scary, even though Bruce Willis is a ghost. It's not that, the scares are contingent upon Bruce Willis being alive or dead.
Great point. That's a great point. Because we just rewatched it with Charlotte. There's the scene with the little girl in the tent. There's even the scenes where he's talking to Cole, and then all of a sudden you see the hanging bodies in the background in the school. Those are some really chill-inducing moments.
Right.
And those moments, because they don't involve the twist, hold up.
Right.
In Unbreakable, we still get tied into David Dunn becoming a superhero and learning his powers. The scene, I wish you could have seen Charlotte watch Unbreakable. The moment, I think I told you, the moment that she was freaking out the most is when the kid kept putting weights on. And he kept lifting the weights because she was expecting, I don't know, his arms to break off or something crazy to happen. Right. And she was just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Yeah.
That doesn't change once you know that Elijah is Mr. Glass.
Right.
It just kind of emphasizes that, he's the supervillain to this superhero character.
Right.
Everything changes in this movie. Once Now, I wanted to ask you one more thing, and then we'll get to the prompts. I'm sorry.
You're
going
a
off the
little
rails here.
impassioned this morning. Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't think watching this movie for the first time after 20 years would, to make like a joke about modern culture. This movie triggered me a little bit.
Yeah, I can tell, man. Jeez.
I'm watching it again, and again, I literally had not seen this movie since the movie theater. I thought what would have actually been a great twist is William Hurt he takes Bryce Dallas Howard, who I think is great in this movie, by the way. I think both of them are actually really good in this movie. And
Yes.
Joaquin Phoenix is phenomenal in this movie. And I actually forgot that he got stabbed and was on like his deathbed. So that moment, actually, I was like, oh shit, that's right.
Yeah.
Because he's really good for the first 50 minutes of this movie before he
Absolutely
pulls a Halloween Kills and spends the rest of the movie in bed. There's a scene where he takes her to the shed that you shouldn't go to, and
right.
And he shows her. He tells her, "Don't scream," and she's blind, but he shows her the costumes, and he confesses that the monsters are not real and that they made them up. But he says there were rumors about these woods that I used to teach in my classes, that there were monsters here. So we just made monsters based on those myths. So I'm rewatching it thinking, you know what would have actually been a good twist to this movie? If it turned out that the myths were true and there were actual fucking monsters in the woods, and she goes out into the woods and encounters the real versions of these monsters.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm going, that's the movie he should have made, because that movie allows him to have the twist, but also not feed his audience, sell his audience that false bill of goods. He's actually going to give the audience the steak they paid for instead of this mishmash of chicken. But obviously that's not what it is. And then to make matters worse, they do a scene like that where there's a monster in the woods, and you think to yourself, oh my God, maybe there is. Maybe this is a real monster. Nope, fooled you again. It's just Oscar winner
Adrian Brody
playing a mentally ill young man dressed up as a monster, and that's the end. And it's like, so this movie not only has the twist that the entire village is a front, then we get the twist of, oh my God, there is a monster. Nope, just kidding. It's Adrian Brody. And then we get the twist of all the twists, that this is effectively Elon Musk and his friends.
Oh God.
Living in the woods.
Right. Because cosplaying.
Yes. Because I love that, like, when they finally open those safes at the end, it's like, billionaire.
Yeah. No, the part that definitely beats you over the head the most is when the Jeep pulls up for the park ranger, and then it says Walker Wildlife Preserve. It's just like comes right into the middle of the frame, like, see, this is it. But look, here's the deal, man, right? You mentioned this one scene earlier that I really want to point out. I was looking for all the signs that the people, the elders that ran the village were from our time, and like they were covering things up, or they didn't know what was going on, or like they started to kind of break character. Because that's the whole thing of this movie, is that you have a group of adults that are like cosplaying like they're from the 19th century, and it's for the sake of their children. Their children have no idea, right? The generations after them think they truly are living in this village, right? But I was looking for those moments where it's like, oh, is there a little clue there? Just like those Sixth Sense clues that you mentioned before. Now, you mentioned this one scene between William Hurt and Sigourney Weaver, and I did pay close attention there because I was like, oh, do they break character? I was always looking for, because, okay. Yeah. All right. Let me just say this, is that one of the things I said about Shyamalan is that his dialogue from this movie on, but even in Signs, can be so jarring and disturbing that like it kind of takes you out of the movie, right? And so this movie is the only movie where they get a pass because it's supposed to be in the 19th century. And so it's like, okay, well, they do talk fucking weird because, you know, it's from over 100 years ago, right? But they actually don't really break character. The closest they come is when William Hurt is given the speech at the end to the other elders. It kind of sounds like he's starting to talk like he's from our time. But that scene that you referenced with him and Sigourney Weaver, they just make a lot of points, but they don't draw a conclusion. They don't go, do you think it's one of the creatures? They don't do that. They just say almost like incomplete sentences. They're like, a coyote couldn't reach that high. The animals are skinned. So it's not like they're directly saying, oh shit, is there a monster? They're not doing that. It's more like they're confused because what you learn by the end of the movie, Adrian Brody's character, Noah, he's the one that's behind all of the random stuff that the elders didn't do. So there are throughout this movie like skinned animal carcasses that you assume once you learn the twist that they're from the elders, but he's actually been doing some stuff, and he always shows this sort of glee and excitement when there's the sound of the creatures, or when the creatures show up. And I think it's because he knows, I think he knows the secret, and he's just like, this is a game. The whole thing with go ahead.
No. I think you're right. I mean, obviously, everything with Noah, Adrian Brody's character, is based on like games. They, his relationship with Bryce Dallas Howard is based on like playing games together in the village, and he's playing somebody who is obviously handicapped, or and so that's how he views the world they live in. So when he finds a costume, it's just, when Shyamalan in this movie, he literally, it's almost as if the movie ends and he turns to the camera at various times to literally speak to us and be like, you see, what happened was, because like when Noah is in the woods chasing Ivy at the end, they like break that scene to go back to the village to open up the quiet room and be like, oh no, he got out and he found one of the costumes that we buried under the floorboards. And you're like, oh, okay. And then like Shyamalan himself shows up at the end, is reading a newspaper, which if you look at the newspaper is like, awful thing happens, awful thing happens, awful thing happens. Everyone is dying. Your kids are being raped. Your house is on fire. And then there's this like almost obnoxious scene where the guy Kevin, the park ranger, opens up the glass case, and Shyamalan's face is in the glass reflecting, and it's almost like he's going,
Right. No, I know it's annoying as hell, but okay. Here's the thing, right? I think I did like this movie when I saw it, but I distinctly remember when she falls over the fence, and you see her falling over the fence through the perspective of the park ranger, like through his car windshield. He's driving a car. I remember being like, "What the hell?" I was like, "Oh, this is stupid," and I thought that in 2004. But the movie as a story, if you were just literally to take that twist out and just do what you said before, where it's a village where they're trying to keep themselves protected from like the world and corruption by making these myths about these creatures, and then there actually being creatures in the woods. That's interesting, right? But I think that Shyamalan, we should probably look at some of his interviews and stuff if we're going to be talking about him so much. But I wonder if he designates himself as a horror filmmaker, right? I mean, we always on this channel talk about, does this count as horror? Is this horror? And I feel like this movie, once you know the twist, there is no horror in it whatsoever.
No,
And,
in fact, I think this is just a drama
yeah,
that uses horror elements. I mean, obviously, we're talking about it on our horror-based channel because of who directed it, because of how it was marketed, because as you see on the ticker there are creatures, right? But look at his filmography, right? The
yeah,
only movie, Sixth Sense, has to do with ghosts. So you clearly that is in the horror genre, whether it's a drama, which it is. I mean, there's one scene in that movie where every single time I watch it, I like bawl like crazy when
yeah.
Cole's talking to Tony Collette, his mother, in the car about grandma. I was like, ugh.
Right.
Unbreakable, which we just covered, is not a horror movie at all.
No.
It's basically a drama that becomes a comic book movie. Signs is about aliens, so you can go sci-fi, even though there are obviously horror elements. This
Yes.
movie, once you get the twist, there's nothing horror in it. I mean, it's sold as a horror movie. So, okay. Lady in the Water is like a fantasy. The Happening was supposed to be a horror movie.
Right, right, right. No,
And then I think he got back to that with The Visit, which is clearly a horror movie. But then you go Split is a horror movie that then kind of turns back to, once you realize it's part of the Unbreakable universe. Oh, speaking of horror movies, once the ending of Split happens, you're like, oh, this is back to that comic book universe that he's doing.
right, right.
I mean, I'm looking forward to Trap. Like, that's kind of why we started covering his movies, because Trap is coming out in August. And I've seen the trailer for that a couple times, and I'm really excited for it. I think it looks great. I do think that you've seen the trailer for Trap, right?
Of course.
I do think that the Shyamalan dialogue that you've been criticizing, when Josh Hartnett like jovially calls over like the guy and it's like, hey, what's going on? And the guy's like, oh, you're not going to believe this. There's a serial killer here. And we
Right.
got all these cops here. We're going to trap him. Let me go back to selling t-shirts. And I'm like, oh, okay. I think Pete's going to have a problem with that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, even in the trailer, it bothers me too. But like, I mean, his movies become exceedingly more goofy by oh my god. Okay, here we go. We got Captain Kraken, by the way, who's on. It's 7:44 a.m. Texas time. We're recording this. He said, "Oh my gosh, M. Night Shyamalan discussion. Talk about a deep rabbit hole." Thank you, Captain Kraken, and thank you for watching.
That's what Noah falls in at the end, a deep rabbit hole.
Yeah. Oh, but then I don't know. We might be getting trolled by Captain Kraken over here. I hope I haven't missed discussion on his best movie to this day, The Last Airbender. No, we haven't. We haven't added that to our list of Shyamalan movies, but we want to go down a rabbit. I want to go down a rabbit hole right here. So, Danny, you were just talking about how, like, with this movie, it's like set up like a horror movie, but then it's not. It's a drama, right? But it's like one of those things where they try to have their cake and eat it too, because it's a drama, but then there's these sort of like lame coincidences to make you have jump scares and for there to be tension and fear. But it's like they have to go out of their way. They have to kind of bend the movie to make it horror. Whereas like nothing really horrible happens. That's why it's not scary at all. There's no fucking person that gets killed besides Adrian Brody. And it's because he fucking just falls into a pit accidentally. It's not like the village is like twisted and to keep their innocence, they got to kill the bad person. And there's a scene where they like off screen murder someone or like scare someone so that they'll be there's no like actual threat to anyone in this movie. Even Bryce Dallas Howard, when she's being chased by one of these creatures, there's no threat to her. It's just Adrian Brody playing a game with her. To the audience, this is more like what you were saying before about William Hurt and Sigourney Weaver having that conversation. It's more like all this shit is happening just to scare the audience versus what's actually happening to these people in this village, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's nothing like that. There's nothing where anyone ever is in true danger. Because even that reveal that Adrian Brody, like maybe he was skinning the animals. Like one part that's like really lame, and I think they ADR'd it, is that when she is getting attacked by the monster in the woods, and you're like, oh shit, there actually are monsters in the woods. And then you see the monster fall into the pit. Then you cut back to the village, and the door's broken. Like essentially, he just burst down the door so he could go out and find Bryce Dallas Howard. And you see his parents that are like, oh, where did he go? They're all scared, right? And then I swear to Christ, the mom says, the animals. And it's like, that feels so fucking fake and artificial. Because it's basically like saying, like, the animals. He's the one that skinned the animals. But like, they wouldn't naturally say that. They'd be like, oh shit, where is he? We better go find him. He stabbed someone before. Like, we got to find him. They wouldn't be like, the animals. Oh, he was behind what the audience is seeing. It's not like that, you know?
Yeah.
So, let's bring us back to our tickers, though. So I would say, though, regardless of all this bullshit, regardless of all the stuff that is just like, yep, I'm just doing this to make the audience feel scared. When you first watch the movie, there is legitimate tension and the atmosphere is great. But because of Shyamalan as a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
no, I think,
yeah, go ahead.
and I think that's part of why that's part of why I get so animated about this movie, is because I think for the first hour it's legitimately really good. It and while there are to go back to your last ticker about like the village rules and the 19th century cosplay, that's another thing that kind of falls apart when you think about it. Like if you're gonna start a commune or a village that is completely cut off from the rest of the world, why? Obviously, you can't have the modern technology because that might give everybody a view into the outside world. That I get. But why are you cosplaying as the 19th century? Why not just like they show you that photo of the town elders in like probably, I don't know, 1980 or 1975, and there's like what William Hurt's carrying a baby and nobody else has any kids. So why are these people who live in the latter half of the 20th century going to give up like their normal? Yeah, why are they going to give up these medicine, for fuck's sake? Why are they going to give up all these things? And why are they going to start talking like people from 100 years ago? Why is Bryce Dallas Howard trained to say, I need medicine post haste, instead of just saying, somebody in my village is sick, I need medicine?
Yeah.
Like those little aspects also are things in the movie that fall apart when you think about it for any amount of time. So, okay, Sigourney Weaver, you must have had a really good job in the modern world. And all of these people, we also don't know how they all met. It was like they were probably at like a bereavement group for people who had family members who died in horrible tragedies.
Right.
Like, have you had a family member viciously murdered by a criminal? Come to our AA meeting, and then maybe there'll be a billionaire there who can start a village for you. But like, why would Sigourney Weaver? We're going to need you to give up all of the modern conveniences of like 1970s America, And are you good at sewing? Because we need everybody to have age authentic clothing. Like it's what's the place in Staten Island that is
The conference, or I'm sorry, I worked at the
Colonial
conference house, Richmond Town.
Richmond Town? Yes, Richmond Town. We used to go there as a kid a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, like we need this to be like a colonial village. So
right,
give up everything you've done in your life and learn how to sew and make food from scratch.
right.
So weird.
Right, right. And we gotta like kind of wrap it up because we're sort of like just kind of circling around a few things here. But the main point to say, just to go along with what you just said, is that the reason why this movie causes you so much annoyance, and I think a lot of people in general get annoyed at it, is because it's really all about like trying to pull off a magic trick for the audience. A magic trick is all about misdirection, where they're like, look at my hand over here because I'm doing something over here. That's what a magic trick is, right? And this movie is just that. It's just like, look over here, because at the end you're going to be like, oh, it was this over here. And when you realize that you're being tricked, like, the movie has magic to it, and there are things that like trick us in movies, but when you focus just on the trick and not like telling a good quality story, then it just annoys people because it just feels like you're literally trying to trick people. Like you're literally telling them misinformation so it could be like, aha, I tricked you. That's what this movie is, maybe more so than any other Shyamalan movie. And so you have these amazing people in this movie. You have Sigourney Weaver, you have Patrick Gleason, and they're just basically like,
Brendan Gleeson.
oh, I'm sorry, I wrote fucking Patrick Gleason. Who
Don't
the
worry.
fuck is Patrick Gleason?
I have no idea.
I just made him up. Okay. Oh my God, I misdirected you. You thought this was a review by someone competent. Guess not. But
and it turns out it's actually the year 3000.
there you go. That's right. That's right. My family was murdered, so I figured we could just go back to yeah. Oh,
you started
man.
a village in your garage.
Yes. There you go. Yes, a simpler time when people made podcasts that got no views. It was amazing. But no. I think it was funny because I was gonna make this thumbnail that was almost gonna be like, make America cosplay again, or like make America colonial again, because that's one of the main themes of this movie, regardless of tricks. To address what you were just saying before, it's like, why do they act this way like they're from the 19th century? I think the idea is that this is a more innocent time. This is a more pure time. So they're going to sacrifice everything to go back in time, which nowadays, that's a very important topic to think about. Like, what are you willing to give up to go back to a time that you think is better than the current time? The current world is horrible and scary. It's got crime. It's got all these problems. What if we wind back the clocks and go back to this time? That's an interesting thing to play around with. But the marketing, like you said before, the way the movie's made, it's really more like, well, we're going to fool you, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you showed this movie chronologically, if this wasn't a Shyamalan movie and it was just some other director where they show chronologically the people meet together and the guy's like, I have an idea. Let's go make this village. Then you have this interesting. Well, that's making you laugh. What? Go ahead.
No, because I think for the second time in our recording, we came up with a better version of the movie The Village. I think that's like, if this movie started at a meeting, like a bereavement group or something, where like where people are meeting to discuss like the effects that the modern world has had on them, where their brothers and their fathers and their relatives are being killed, and they've faced these horrible tragedies, and they think, man, we should just go back. And it just so happens that one of them is insanely rich and goes, well, I might have an idea. And then we watch for 90 minutes that idea come to fruition, and the movies, and I'm picturing, take a trip with me. I'm picturing like the ending of the movie being this like insane drone shot of like the village, every aspect of the village that we've seen, including the woods, including people in costume as the monsters, like stalking around.
Yeah.
And then the drone keeps going up, and it keeps going up, and then as you clear the village and the woods, you just see like highways with cars driving by, and
Right.
you see like a city not too far, maybe like 20 miles off in the distance with skyscrapers, and you realize just how close to everything they are,
Right.
while being able to seclude themselves. No twist needed. You're told what's going to happen. I think that is such a better story here.
Yep.
This movie almost feels like it started as like a almost like as like a punchline, where it's like, you know, kind of like that Magical act. Like, hey, what if we made a period piece and it turned out that it wasn't a period piece, it was all happening in modern times? Okay, well, how would we do
Yeah.
that? Well, they'd have to be in the woods, right? So here, like in a wildlife preserve, right? So,
Yeah.
well, how do you keep the people from like in? Oh, well, we'll have the director show up like he's Hitchcock and have him say to the audience, "Oh, you know, I got in trouble last year because there's no planes that are allowed to fly through this area,"
Yep.
which is the most
Awkward.
most awkward expository line,
Yep. Yep.
because it's literally like him again turning to the audience and going, "See, haha,
Yep.
that's why you didn't see any planes. I just explained it to you." And you're like, I before we go, I do want to mention, I said there was one scene in this movie that I
Yes. Yes.
genuinely loved.
Please. I want to hear it. I want to hear it.
It's probably not the scene that you are thinking or that anyone is thinking, but I genuinely loved Joaquin Phoenix in this movie.
Absolutely.
From the opening scene, you really know who he is as a character, where you find out that he's the one that like did the Back to the Woods challenge for a record that will never be broken, and he's like the bravest kid, but he's also so quiet, and he doesn't. And it's him and Ivy, Bryce Dallas Howard, and it's them sitting on the porch, and it's the moment where where like she angrily yells at him to like, "Why won't you, like, when I hope we would dance like this at our wedding." And she gets like mad at him for being like this very introverted, quiet guy, and he finally like opens up and goes, "You know, is it my fault that you say everything that's in your head and I'm not allowed to keep things?" And it's just this wonderful scene with great music. James Newton Howard does the score for most of Shyamalan's movies, and I think he's like a very underrated composer. And it's just
Totally agree.
this great scene of them on the porch. There's no monsters. It doesn't matter that it's 1890 or 2020, and it's just the two of them. And then there's just this amazing little moment where, as they're about to kiss, the camera just pans back and turns to the side, and it's almost like the movie poster of the rocking chair on the porch with
Yes.
the woods in the background.
Yes.
And I watched that last night, and I'm like, shit, that is such a great scene. It's such a great little scene. And it might be one of my favorite scenes that Shyamalan ever directed. And then, like 10 minutes later, Joaquin Phoenix gets stabbed, and you're like, which I really did completely forgot happened. And I was like, oh, fuck, that's right. He's not in this movie anymore.
Right.
And
It's go ahead.
No, and it just, I almost wish that was another thing that was going through my head of, it's like, you're William Hurt. You're finally, after all this time, you're going to break the rules, and you're going to allow somebody to go into the woods and go get medicines from the towns. So you send the blind girl, and I get it that it's within her character and that, she's a strong character. And I do really like Bryce Dallas Howard in this movie. But from just from a standpoint of, does this make any sense? No.
Well,
like
but
he does send the two guys with her and they like cower out immediately.
right, but that's the whole thing, right? And then we have another person here, Bolts Demeek. I don't know if we're gonna get trolled by them too, or if they're here, but Bolts, welcome. But I was gonna say that it makes sense within the movie because he's essentially sending the blind girl out to the real world because she can't come back and be like, and then they had these chariots without horses, and and then the uniform was so different, and they had some kind of device. Like, she can't explain all these things because she can't literally see it. So I think
because
that, like,
the people can't tell her that. Like Kevin the park ranger conveniently doesn't say, "Miss, it's like 2004. What the fuck are you doing?" Like,
yeah. Oh, thank you, Bolts. To make it's your second time here. Well, welcome. We are just pretty much trashing the village because of how flimsy its twists and everything behind it seem. But yeah, that is a very annoying thing. That's another thing that, like, things have to be bent in an awkward way to make it work. Because she gets picked up by this park ranger. I mean, he comes up to her. He doesn't take her like in his car or anything like that. But then everything he says is set up in a way so that he doesn't reveal things. He's not like,
yeah.
do you know what year it is? He's not like, or like, where, go ahead. Go, what are you going to say?
No, I was just going to say his dialogue is the most conveniently plot convenient dialogue of all time. Like, right. She asks him, what was that noise? And he doesn't like explain, oh, those were the sirens in my car.
Right.
Which would initiate follow-up conversation. There's a lot of that. Like, why do you need medicine? Oh, because somebody in my village is sick. Where is your village? Through the woods. Oh, okay. Well, stand right here and I'll be back in a half hour. Like, right. He doesn't ask any follow-up questions. He doesn't put her in the car and take her with him.
Correct.
So that logistically would never happen. Again, It's like one of those things, like you find a blind girl who just climbed over a wildlife fence on a road. You're not going to do what she asks you to do and then let her climb back over the fence. You're just not going to do that.
No.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I know. And here, let's Bolts Demeek. Yes, I remember the movie, and I'm glad you all are dissecting it like this. It makes so much sense. Thanks, Bolts. Yeah, we're trying to break this down. I would say, kind of to like just kind of wrap it up and stuff, is that Shyamalan, regardless of his twists and his goofy dialogue, he still is a great just filmmaker. Just putting things on film, things to look at. Even The Happening has like amazing. I haven't seen After Earth, but I bet you there's something good in there. The Last Airbender, I actually haven't seen that shit, but what I did see of it was like pretty rough. But like every single movie, he's got a signature style. He has a lot of shots that are just like the camera's focused on one specific thing. You often see shots where there's like things reflected in the glass. Signs has one of the creepiest, amazing shots where the alien is reflected in the TV glass at the end. Here in this goofy scene that you're talking about, Shyamalan himself is reflected in the glass as he's reading the newspaper. He does, his camera work it's always very like tight and focused on specific shots, like where it feels like almost like a comic book panel, which makes sense considering that he made Unbreakable, right? Like he obviously knows something about comic books, but a lot of his shots feel like set up comic book panels. And his scenes, even though they're filled with like goofy dialogue, they, for the most part, seem like deliberate scenes versus scenes where it's like, oh, we just need to get from A to B. So we're just having this one scene of dialogue where they're just talking. Like a lot of movies, especially modern movies, have scenes where it's just like, oh, well, this is the person driving to get to Aunt's house. So they're just showing that they're in the car and they say two things, right? But his movies have like very deliberate scenes where like specific happen. So I think that he is very talented. I would love to talk to him. I think he's probably a really fucking interesting guy. But he does have issues, and this movie, I think, is the first time that those issues are right in our face.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add to that, or do you want to talk about what's coming up?
No, I think we've
We've beaten a
exhausted.
dead horse.
Yeah,
We've skinned it and left it to be found.
Yes.
We're on the same wavelength. That Patrick
Yeah.
Gleason energy over here. So,
Yeah.
what were you gonna say? Though, you gonna talk about what's coming up?
Well, I mean, probably. So first of all, they announced on Twitter/X that Interview with a Vampire is getting a season 3.
Fuck yeah.
That is, first of all, which is phenomenal, because not only has it been probably the best show on TV, especially that we have covered for the last couple of years, but we've just had a blast talking about it. We had a live review the other day where we had a ton of people coming in and commenting, which was great. And the finale of season 2 is this Sunday. Now you are going to be on a family vacation, which is great. And I hope I hope you have a great time. So what we are going to do is I'm going to give you guys a YouTube short, probably 45 to 60-second reaction to the finale. And the following Saturday, we are going to be back at our normal early Saturday morning time, and we are going to be doing a live review of the season 2 Interview with a Vampire finale, and probably do like a breakdown of the whole season. And then obviously, now that we can officially say it, I'll look ahead to season 3. So that's really like where all of our energy is focused. We've been covering M. Night Shyamalan movies. We have reviews up on the channel for his daughter's movie, The Watchers, for The Visit, for Unbreakable, for The Village now. So that's 4 Shyamalan family movies, 3 by M. Night. What is our next one? Is it Split?
Yes.
Are we doing Split?
Yes.
So we're going to come back to the Unbreakable verse. But first, we're going to spend probably 90 minutes with a super cool James McAvoy horror character. And that will be our next M. Night Shyamalan movie review as we work our way to Trap. And yeah, that Interview with a Vampire really carrying us through the early parts of the summer.
Yeah. God, I love that show so much. And I can't believe I'm going to be out of town for the finale. But I'm looking forward to talking to you about it afterwards. Guys, thank you so much for those of you that were here and interacted with the chat, even though you trolled us about The Last Airbender. And, we're just so grateful for all of you guys watching our channel. There was a lot of comments on that Interview with the Vampire episode last. And, Danny always does awesome get back to everybody. But yeah, we're so thankful that you guys watch our stuff and come watch us some more as we talk about Split. We'll see y'all.